A boy died. They buried him. But 3 nights later, he knocked on his mother's door. In the village of Umuoke, something happened that made even the elders afraid to speak. It was about a sweet child, named Ikenna. A boy who died too soon. A boy they buried with prayers and pain. A boy who came back, but wasn't the same. Ikenna was 9 years old, born on a moonless night, but with a smile that lit up every room. He was quiet, thoughtful, the kind of child who plucked snails gently from footpaths so they wouldn't be stepped on. His mother, Mama Adiku, called him her miracle. She had waited many years for a child. She had visited every shrine, drank every bitter root, and slept in every prophet's hut. When Ikenna came, she wrapped him in white cloth and declared, "Even the gods will not take this one from me." He grew up like a quiet flame. He never caused trouble, never shouted, never lied. He walked with his hands behind his back, like an old man trapped in a young body. But there was one thing about Ikenna that everyone knew. He was too curious. He asked questions no one had answers for. Why do trees dance when no one sings? Why do dogs bark at nothing? Why do people bury the dead so deep? The elders would frown and mutter, "This child asks too many things." But Mama Adiku would smile and say, "His spirit is wide. Let it stretch." Every morning, after sweeping the compound and fetching water, Ikenna would wander to the edge of the forest. Not too deep, just enough to watch butterflies dance and to chase fireflies that still lingered after dawn. Mama Adiku warned him, "Never cross the old Irako tree. That side of the forest belongs to things we don't understand." And Ikenna, always obedient, nodded. But children, like rivers, sometimes forget their banks. It was on the 3rd market day of the month. The air was thick. Even the birds refused to sing. Mama Adiku made yam porridge and called Ikenna to eat. He came and smiled but barely touched the food. Instead, he picked up his small calabash, the one he used to catch beetles, and walked out. "Don't stay long," she said. "I won't," he answered. That was the last thing he ever said to her. Hours passed. The sun climbed and fell. Goats returned. Children came home from the stream. But Ikenna did not return. At first, Mama Adiku thought he had gone to visit the priest's compound. Then she thought he had followed his cousin to the market. Then she thought. Too many thoughts. By nightfall, she was running barefoot across the village, hair loose, wrapper half-tied, crying, "Have you seen my son? Have you seen my child?" The villagers lit torches. Men gathered with machetes and lanterns. They called his name into the trees. They beat the drums of calling. Even the dogs howled into the dark. Then, past the old Irako tree, where the air no longer smelled like earth but like rust and ash, they found him. Lying still. Eyes closed. Skin cold. No wound. No blood. Just silence. They said he looked like he was sleeping. But the ancestors had already taken him. Mama Adiku let out a scream that cut through wind and leaf. A sound so sharp, even the night paused to listen. She wrapped him in cloth with shaking hands, carried him home, and for 3 days refused to let him go. On the 4th day, the elders gathered. They said it was time. The priest poured libations. A rooster was sacrificed. The grave was dug under the old mango tree behind their compound, a tree known for its wide shade and bitter fruit. The whole village came, even those who had never spoken to Mama Adiku before. Women wept. Children stood still. Men lowered their heads. They laid Ikenna down with a toy drum by his side and a pebble from the stream he loved. As they covered him, the wind rose and the sky cracked. Not with thunder, but with something heavier. A silence so loud it bent the branches. And when it was over, Mama Adiku stood by the mound of earth and said only one thing. "You said you wouldn't stay long." But what no one knew was that Ikenna had heard her. And something else had heard her too. Because grief is a doorway. And sometimes, grief leaves it open. The village of Umuoke returned to its routines slowly. Children laughed again, but not as loud. Women sang at the stream, but only in the mornings. And Mama Adiku, she did not speak much anymore. She would sit under the mango tree where her son lay, humming old lullabies to the soil, her fingers digging softly at the ground like she still hoped he'd answer. Neighbors brought food. Priests offered comfort. But none of it filled the gap left in her chest. For 3 days, the village honored the boy they lost. They said prayers, lit lamps, spoke of how kind and quiet he was, and how death is the debt every soul must pay. But on the 3rd night, the very night his spirit was supposed to fully depart, something changed. It began with a knock. Tap, tap, tap. Not loud, not rushed, just soft, like a child asking to come home. Mama Adiku had not slept. Grief does not always let you. She sat near her mat, staring at the wall, when the knock came again. She stood. Her heart, it didn't race. It paused. She opened the door, slowly, slowly, as if the wind itself might step in. And there he was. Ikenna, barefoot, in the same red wrapper he was buried in. Eyes wide, and smiling. Mama Attica gasped. She staggered back. But when he said, "Mama," in the exact voice he'd always used, soft, polite, something broke inside her. Mama Attica screamed. Then she touched his face. Warm. She held his hand. Alive. She fell to her knees and wept, this time with joy. She pulled him into her arms and wept until her wrapper was soaked with tears and sweat and the fear she refused to name. The neighbors rushed in. They stood in silence. And when they saw the child breathing, blinking, standing, they said only one thing. The gods have returned him. In the days that followed, Umuoke was filled with joy. Drums returned to the marketplace. The elders praised the gods for sparing Ikenna. Even the chief declared a feast in honor of the boy who conquered death. But joy is a slippery thing. When you hold it too tight, it starts to squirm. The first to notice something was Mama Nkechi, the herbalist's wife. She said, "That child doesn't blink." Others laughed. "Old age has tightened your mind," they said. But then came the second whisper, and the third. At first, it was little things. Ikenna no longer ate food. He sat at the dinner mat, watching his mother chew, his head tilted, as if he had forgotten how to swallow. When he walked, he left no footprints, even when the ground was wet with dew. Obi the dog, once his closest companion, would growl and crawl under the hut whenever Ikenna came near. Mama Attica noticed. She watched him at night, standing by the door for hours, staring at nothing. Sometimes he would hum, but not the songs he knew. Strange tunes. Old ones. Songs that made the candles flicker. He never played again. Never asked questions. He just watched. Children said his shadow moved even when he stood still. A trader claimed she saw him walk through a flock of birds, and not one bird moved. An elder swore he saw Ikenna standing by the river at dawn, whispering into the water, and the water whispered back. And then the dreams began. Children woke up crying, saying, "Ikenna stood by my mat. He was smiling, but his eyes were black." No one spoke of it during the day, but fear crept into Umuoke like smoke under a door. One night, Mama Adiku had a dream. She stood before the mango tree, and the ground beneath it cracked. From the earth, a hand reached out, a small hand, grabbing her wrist. And she heard a voice. Soft, weak, but familiar. "Mama, I am still here. You buried me, and I'm cold." She woke up sweating. She looked at Ikenna, standing by the window, staring out into the darkness. He turned to her, and for the first time his smile disappeared. The next morning she went to Papa Okari, the blind elder who remembered things the land itself had forgotten. He sat under his thatched hut, listening. When she told him everything, he touched the ground and said, "Long ago that mango tree was planted over bones. Children who died during the Great Famine. No names, no graves, just forgotten souls crying for remembrance." Mama Attica gasped. He nodded slowly and added, "You buried your son among the unremembered, and now one of them wears his skin." She cried, "But he smiles at me." Papa Okri said, "So do spirits when they are hungry for love." It was then she knew. The thing in her home was not her child. It was a memory with a heartbeat. A spirit who wanted more than peace. It wanted to be loved, to be claimed, to be remembered. But at what cost? Mama Attiku left Papa Okri's hut with her feet trembling and her eyes dry. Not because she had stopped crying, but because fear had emptied her tears. The next morning, Mama Attiku wrapped a black cloth around her head and walked to the shrine of Akeji the priestess, the oldest living daughter of the soil. She didn't greet anyone on the road. Not the palm wine tapper. Not the traders. Not even the children playing by the stream, who all stopped and stared as she passed. For the village could feel it. Something was about to break. Inside the shrine, the air was thick with smoke and silence. Akeji sat on a low stool, her eyes milky from age but still filled with fire. Before Mama Attiku could speak, the old woman said, "Your child came back, but he's not yours. You buried him in a place where the forgotten sleep." And one of them woke, hungry for love. Mama Attiku fell to her knees. "What do I do?" she whispered. Akeji placed a white feather on her palm and said, "Tonight, go to the mango tree. Alone. Burn the clothes he was buried in. Pour palm oil on the roots. And when he comes, call him by a name that was never his. If he answers, he must return to where he came from." That night, she could not sleep. And even if she tried, the house would not let her. That night, while the village slept and the moon hid behind clouds, Mama Attiku walked to the mango tree. She carried Ikena's burial cloth in one hand, a calabash of palm oil in the other. Her feet trembled, but her spirit stood tall. She poured the oil. She lit the cloth, and the flames whispered like voices rising from the grave. Then she turned, and there he was, Ikena, standing just a few feet away. His eyes glowed faintly. His skin looked older, worn like bark. And his voice came not from his mouth, but from the wind. "Mama, it's me." She held up the feather and spoke gently. "You are not Ikena. You are one of the forgotten. But I see you now. I call you Nyameka, the child we left behind." The spirit paused. Then it smiled. But this time not with malice. With sorrow. The spirit stepped forward, and for a moment its face shifted. Not a boy's face, but many faces. Dozens of children. Crying. Laughing. Waiting. And in a voice like many voices it said, "We were once loved too. But the famine buried us without names. We never wanted revenge. We just wanted someone to remember." Then it placed a hand over Mama Attika's heart and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." The wind roared. The flames died. And the child was gone. The next morning, Mama Attiku found Ikena's body under the tree. Cold again. But this time, his face was at peace. His hands folded. His eyes gently shut, like one who had finally finished a journey. The villagers gathered. This time they buried him properly, with chants, with drums, with tears that healed instead of wounded. And beside his grave, they built a shrine for the unremembered. A place where the names of lost children would be spoken, where mothers could light candles, where stories would be told, so that no soul would ever vanish in silence again. And that, my child, is the tale of Ikena, the boy who returned from the grave, not as himself, but as a voice for the voiceless. Let this be a lesson. Not every silence is peace. Some are cries that no one heard. And not every smile is human. So remember the forgotten. Honor the unspoken. And never, ever bury the dead without remembering their name. Because some spirits do not rest until someone says, "You mattered."